My name is Jake Kirian, and I, along with the proposition, firmly believe that the United States government should begin negotiations with the Taliban. I would first like to start by refuting some of their points. They said that since the Taliban is splintered, it would be impossible or unlikely for us to communicate with them properly. However, last year in 2009, the Council of Mujahideen recently united the 5 branches of the Taliban, mainly for the purposes of negotiation. This is according to the London Times. Meaning that the main branches of the Taliban in Pakistan, in Uzbekistan, in Kazakhstan, in Iran are uniting for the purposes of negotiating with the U.S. primarily. Showing that not only do we have an obvious interest in negotiating with the Taliban, but the members of the Taliban themselves have an interest in negotiating with us. And furthermore, the people of Afghanistan, military officers, political members, everyday citizens are tired of this war, and we need a peaceful, effective solution to a bloody, senseless war that has been going on for almost over a decade. Now I'd like to move on to my first point, which is that we have put too many lives and too much money into this war. 57 troops died in the first 2 months of our invasion. The surge shortly after the first stages of the invasion caused a 350% spike in casualties in the first 2 months of 2009. Almost 40,000 civilians of Afghanistan have died as a result of the war in Afghanistan. The source for that is also the London Times, as well as cooperating studies done by the New York Times. We've spent $445 billion on the war in Afghanistan. You know what that money could have done rather than spent it on the deaths of our own soldiers and foreign civilians? With $445 billion, we could have paid 7 million public school teachers. We could have paid for 266 million children to have health care, or we could have paid for 21 million students to receive a 4-year college education. Now, instead of spending valuable money being something that our country needs right now, we spent it on killing. We spent it on bloodshed. We spent it on an unnecessary war that frankly never would have affected us in the first place. We don't even have 21 million children in the U.S. That shows how much money we've spent on this war. Under General McChrystal, we've sent an additional 16,000 troops to capture Marja, a Taliban center. Now, this shows that not only has the U.S. is not learning from our actions. We are having troops killed in foreign territories by hostile soldiers, and we are still sending more troops over there. Our government is showing a disregard for the lives of our own citizens and for the families of those soldiers. Also, I would like to bring up the fact that the continuation of violence will lead to the increase of civilian casualties in Afghanistan. 60% of Afghan casualties of citizens were caused by American air raids. 60%, meaning a majority of the deaths during the war in Afghanistan were not caused by the Taliban. The majority of deaths of civilians were caused by us. We are the source of more deaths in Afghanistan than the Taliban, the group of terrorists that have been doing so much harm on that country, have done. Also, violence isn't working. Dr. Bijan Farnudi with the International Committee of the Red Cross, I know it's a funny name, with the International Committee of the Red Cross, says that the number of IEDs soared by 40% last month. So basically, we are not seeing an increase in we're not seeing a decrease in the number of casualties or roadside bombings because of the violent efforts that we have taken in the Middle East. Basically, we need to resort to negotiation purely because of the fact that it is our last measure. It is the most effective measure that we can take. I would also like to bring up a list of people who support negotiations in Afghanistan with the Taliban, and this is according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. These are all very important people. President Obama, General Stanley McChrystal, the head military officer in Kabul, the capital. Oh, was that time?
No, that's it.
The head military officer in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, a majority of congressmen, as well as the President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai. Which also says that the leader of the Afghan government supports negotiating with the Taliban. This is the man who is looking out for the best interests of his country and for the decrease in loss of lives of civilians and of our soldiers and of NATO soldiers. America has lost 1,200 soldiers since our occupation of Afghanistan, and the number of NATO soldier casualties are approaching 1,000. Those are from over a dozen other democratic countries in Western Europe. meaning that we are not seeing a decrease in casualties, we are not seeing less fighting, we are not seeing less roadside bombings, and the people of Afghanistan, along with the head of the U.S. military, support negotiations. My name is Jake Kirian, and I, along with the proposition, firmly believe that the U.S. should start negotiations with the Taliban as soon as possible. Thank you.